I'm Helen Wisdom. We are at 1734 Palmer Avenue in New Orleans, Louisiana 70118. This is the sunroom. This is why we're living here, is this room, because it's just such a joy. It's funny, you go to the grocery store, you know people there. You go to the movies, you'll see somebody you know. It's a very friendly community, and it's very close in a lot of ways, I would say. I rarely get down to the French Quarter unless we're going to Antoine's or Galatoire's, basically, or to go antique shopping, but I don't do much of that sort of thing, but it's beautiful down there. One of the things I love here is it's like being look at the birds going by. It's like being in a bird sanctuary. In this canopy, there are just so many wild birds flying by. I had no idea New Orleans had that going on. The other thing I like so much is two of my children live really close. Arthur and his family live a block and a half over that way, and Andy a block and a half that way. So I can look out of this window and see my grandchildren skateboarding by or going to the park or whatever. It's really nice. Matt's so far away, he's about 8 blocks away. I've been trying to get him to move into the neighborhood over here, but haven't had any luck yet. Born and raised in New Orleans, born in Touro Hospital. Lived in uptown New Orleans. Been here really basically forever, with a short time out in California. Well, I was the second child. I was born in 1939. I have a brother who's 4 years older. And of course, my first memory is when Pearl Harbor was bombed. I was 2 years old, getting ready to be 2 years old. My birthday is December the 9th. And I can remember seeing that everybody was so excited about something, and it wasn't my birthday yet. And I couldn't understand why everybody was so carried away with this bombing of Pearl Harbor. I didn't quite understand what it meant. But I have a very strong memory of that. And thinking, but it isn't my birthday yet. Why is everybody so worried? I was really looking forward to being 2, as I recall. And I don't have too many memories after that during the war, a few. My father was in the Navy. He was on a minesweeper, and he was in the mouth of the Mississippi River a good bit of the time, checking for mines. When I was young, I went to LaSalle School, which is on the corner of Webster and Perrier. We lived on Calhoun Street, and I was allowed to walk to school when I was in kindergarten. I went when I was 4. And such a different world then than it is now. It was a much, much safer world. The public schools were really good. There were about maybe 23 or 4 children in my class. All of them were quite bright, and the teachers were excellent. It was a wonderful little school. By the time I was in 7th grade, the city decided to change the school system, so they went from having K through 8 to having a middle school, and they changed it to kindergarten through 6th grade, and then it was 7th, 8th, and 9th, and I ended up going to McMain for junior high, and it was a very strange experience for me there, because I was like brilliant compared to everybody else. I don't know how this happened, why there was such a big gap. I was in classes with boys who were older than I, who couldn't read. It was very, very strange. I was getting all A's, and my parents decided something had to be wrong with the school system, because they could see that I wasn't doing much work. So eventually at the end of 8th grade, they took me out of the school and applied to McGee's. I had, at that time, wanted to go to Newman because I had several friends who were going to Newman, and I would have really have liked that. But in that day and age, you didn't get to make those choices. The parents made the choices, and you just did whatever they decided. I had gone to LaSalle, and then to McGee's, and then on to Newcomb. And at that time, you could get a degree in education after 4 years. Now you have to have a master's in education after your 4 years. When I came back to New Orleans after my first husband died, I taught at a school for, they called them exceptional children, but they were exceptional on the downside, not the upside. And I enjoyed that. It was hard work, but it was good work. And I also got to be off at 2 o'clock so I could pick up Arthur and have a pretty full day with him afterwards. And that was nice. And then I taught at Country Day after Bill Wisdom died. Then I ended up, by happenstance, really teaching there. And I had this Matthew's teacher, actually. I ran into her in the park, and she said she didn't have an assistant, and she was desperate. And I said, well, I have a degree in education. I'll come work for you till you find somebody. And many years later, I was still working Country Day. She had gone on to greener pastures, and I was still doing that. But it was nice because it's a fabulous atmosphere, and my children were there. They knew how to reach me, and I learned all about what was going on in their school. Embarrassed them all the time. They just hated it. They were so funny, though. They came to me and said one day, I had gotten a cello, and I was going to take cello lessons. And Matt said, now, you've just about embarrassed us enough around this place. If you get up on the auditorium stage with that cello, we will just die. That will be the end. So my response was to say, oh, if I've ever heard a dare, that's it. But actually, when I did start teaching there, Andy and Matt had a set of rules for me. They said I could never, ever correct one of their friends. I could not correct them in front of their friend. They had laid it all out. And I pretty much paid attention to that because they were in the lower school then. I didn't start working there until after Matthew had finished 4th grade, but it worked out pretty well. It's so funny, you forget your parents embarrass you terribly. Well, when I was in high school, I was as a senior, a friend of mine got me a date with Art Mateer, and she dated his best friend, and we went out together for quite a long time. What was really nice, it was, I guess, about January, February of my senior year, so that meant that I had an escort for all of the graduation parties and all of the events at the end of high school year, and that was really special and nice. But then it turned into a serious relationship. We were together for 4 years before we married, and then we had Arthur, and then he died, so we weren't married for very long, which was too bad, but that's the understatement of the year. Anyway, that was how, and we just had a lot of fun together. While I was in college, he joined the Navy. He had finished college, and he became a Navy pilot. But he studied in Pensacola, which was really close by, so he could come home for weekends. And we spent a lot of time together. He went to Jesuit High School, and he had gone off to the Citadel for college for a couple of years, but he came back to Tulane because his ultimate plan was to go to law school, and he wanted to major in political science, which the Citadel didn't have as a major. So he moved back to New Orleans and sort of joined a fraternity, and then just took it really easy for a long time. When he was at the Citadel, he worked really hard, and he was always striving to do the best and be the top athletically and scholastically and every kind of way. And he got to Tulane, and he just more or less stopped for quite a while and just relaxed. And he met me. I think it ruined his career. We just had a lot of fun. He started out in law school and then decided he wasn't really ready for it, so that's when he joined the Navy and became a pilot. So I met Bill Wisdom when I went to a gala that my friend Bessie Derby was helping to coordinate. She had a date with him, and she was getting ready to leave to go to England for several years to live, so I didn't feel too bad about that. We talked for a while, and while we were talking, at that time I was a smoker, and I reached with my right hand down into my purse and pulled out a cigarette. Then I reached in and got a box of matches, opened it up, all with one hand, opened it up, closed the matches, lighted my cigarette, and I wasn't even thinking about it, and he was just overwhelmed with my manual dexterity. I think that was what attracted him to me. Anyway, he said, "Do you go out?" And I said, "Well, yes, I do." But I had an unlisted phone number, so I didn't tell him that. I figured if he wanted to go out with me, he could find me. He knew there were ways, and it took him a while. He finally remembered that I had a brother that he had known growing up, so he called my brother and got my phone number. So anyway, it was rather nice. And we only dated for 4 months before we got married. It wasn't very long. He was 29, and I, having been married before, wasn't in sort of the hurry that he was in. He was ready to get married. I've thought lately, what have I missed in my life? And I thought it would have been fun to have courted for a little longer before you get right into the marriage thing. But that was all right. He told a friend of his that after he met me, he said, "I've met the person I'm going to marry." And he had, in fact, his old girlfriend from Harvard Law School was coming down 2 weekends later. And she came down and he broke it off. And that was sort of that. That was it. So it was really pretty quick. And during that time, for the first month or two, I would have a date with him on Saturday night or whatever. But it seemed to progress right along. I was a bit surprised when he asked me to marry him, but took a deep breath and said yes. But we didn't tell anybody till after Christmas. We thought we would just live with it ourselves for a little while. And then after Christmas we did. So Bill wanted to get married right away. And the problem was Mardi Gras was coming up. So the priest at Trinity Church said, "You have 2 choices. You can get married before Mardi Gras or after Mardi Gras, but not during Lent." So he thought we would get married before Mardi Gras, which then my poor parents had to deal with that because they didn't have much time. Mardi Gras was very early that year. But we got married February 19th. And then went off to Spain on our honeymoon, Spain and Portugal. It was wonderful. I had never been to Europe, and it was just thrilling. When I first met him, he had a trip around the world after he finished law school, and he had pictures in his apartment of different places he'd been to, such as Angkor Wat in Japan and India. And I just thought that was so wonderful to have those pictures. It became my ambition after he had died to maybe do some of that myself. So I got interested in traveling, photographing. Took some classes, learned how to do it a little bit better than I had been doing. But he was a more analytical photographer than I am. I'm more sort of creative and abstract. And he was very into the f-stops and the preciseness of how to do it correctly. I haven't done as much recently as I would have liked, because the problem with digital is that you need to know how to use a computer, which I do not know how to. I'm trying to learn now, but I've taken a lot of pictures and they're just in the ether somewhere. I used to take them to get developed, and I would have an easier time working with the photographs when I could lay them out all side by side and see what was better. But this is a whole new world with photography. In fact, I've taken up painting now, because I find that even 6-year-olds have cameras these days. Everybody has a camera. And they're pretty good cameras. They can take fairly nice pictures. So I thought I would just try to paint. It's a lot of fun. So you had asked me earlier about what I was proudest of, and I guess I would say my 3 children. That's my greatest accomplishment. And I'm really just thrilled with all 3 of them. They're wonderful kids. My first child was born in 1961 in Palo Alto, California. His dad was away on a bombing mission, or learning how to do bombing, or whatever it is you learn to do when you're in the Navy Air Force. But he came home for the weekend, and so I had the baby on that weekend. He was gone the week before, and he was gone for 2 weeks afterwards. And I got to stay in the hospital for 2 weeks, which was really very lovely, because it was not a government hospital. It was just a normal hospital. So by the time I left, I was feeling pretty good. And then he had gotten home from his training exercises, so that was very nice. I was 20, how old was I? 21. I had never held babies very much. I really knew nothing about children. So had to learn by doing as best I could. I didn't have any help, so it was a little hard, but it was great. He was 5 months old when his 5 months. No, I guess he was 5 months old when his dad went away on a cruise for 7 months, and then he came back for about a month, and then after that he went off on some training missions, and that's when he died. So my first child, really, Arthur, never got to know his father because he was gone for most of his life. So it was very sad, of course. 3.5 years later, I married Bill, and sort of like the marriage thing, he wanted to have children right away. We had talked about waiting, and he had said, well, we'll wait at least a year. And then by May, he said, I think we should start having children now. So we had planned on that, but it didn't happen, and it didn't happen. We were married 3 years before I had Andrew, and then another 3 years before I had Matthew. When Andy was born, one day, Arthur and I were watching a program that used to be on television called Quiz Kids, and they were all these very, very super bright children answering questions. And one of the questions was, "Do you like being an only child, or would you prefer to have siblings?" And their answers were interesting. And I said to Arthur, how do you feel about this? Did you prefer being an only child, or do you like having siblings? He said, "Oh, much better having siblings. I really love having siblings." So I thought that was very nice. Took the microscope a little bit off of Arthur too, which was good. It's very strange when you think back about what was going on. I was up to my elbows with children and baby, and Vietnam was going on. The world was just in a big explosion, it seemed like, all the time. We would sit down to dinner, and we would watch television sometimes, and the news programs would be the body counts in Vietnam, and we would just be sort of calmly sitting there having our dinner. It's very strange to look back on that. We were so inured to what was going on. A lot of demonstrations and so forth were just beginning to happen about the war. I guess just about as we got married, they were really getting bigger and bigger, and people were wanting to get out of Vietnam. But it took quite a while. Which, of course, is what scares everybody about Iraq. We would like to get out, but how, With my mother, she was an only child, and she sort of wanted to co-opt my life to a great extent. She liked to control what I did. So I tended to, with my own children, to try really hard not to be too controlling or try to get too deeply involved in their lives, because I hated that in my own life. Of course, then my children probably felt like I was not stern enough or strict enough or involved enough in some level, so they will have the backlash with their children of probably being very involved. And then their children, I don't know, it's one of those things. Adore my daughters-in-law. They're just fabulous. I'm so lucky. And of course the grandchildren are beyond special. Pierce is 16. He's the oldest one. And the youngest one is Tommy. He's just turned 5. And everybody seems to be doing very well. They're quite a pleasure. I don't babysit as such. I basically have them over one at a time, and they'll come spend the night, and we will do things together. And that's very special. I really like that a lot. You can have a relationship. You can talk to them. They will actually talk to you if they're by themselves. And I like to play card games with them, or board games, or whatever it is that we do. Sometimes I just want to look at videotapes. And what I like to do is wait on them hand and foot. Anything they like, anything they want to have, they can have. they're allowed to have things here that they're not allowed to have anyplace else. The other day, one of the grandchildren, William, was saying to me, "Oh, I'm not allowed to have Coca-Cola." And I said, "Well, you know your mom allows you to have things here you can't do at other places." So he said, "I do believe I'll have a Coke then." So he had about a half a glass, but it was fine. It was nice. Thinking about the grandchildren, I guess I have to say I think a lot about skiing because they all come out to Telluride and we all ski together out there. And it's just been wonderful through the years to do that. It's maybe the only athletic activity all generations can do together, and it's lots of fun. They're all good skiers now, with the exception of Tommy and Grayson, who will be in the next few years, I'm sure. They're only 5 now, and they know they've had some lessons. They're going to get there. But Helen's not an avid skier, but she's learning. Arthur's children are fabulous skiers, all of them, particularly Pierce, the oldest one. That's a lot of fun. And then they come to Maine, and it's really fun to have them come to Maine. My children aren't as invested in Maine as they are in Colorado because everybody likes to ski, and Maine is more of an adult vacation, I think. I think you need to grow up with Maine every year to sort of appreciate the fact that you're in the country by yourself and it's quiet and there's not a lot going on. What I do there is I like to garden. I have a beautiful, beautiful garden there, and I like to do that. But the tides are 12 feet, and on one side of the cottage there's an area that empties out, and it used to be the old town swimming hole, and it's great. You can go down there and get periwinkles and starfish and all kinds of interesting shells. Oh, that's nice. You can get lobsters from the lobstermen. It's just a beautiful place to be. The weather's cool and lovely, and in fact, Andy and Maria and their children are going for 2 weeks this summer, so I'm really thrilled about that. I won't be there while they're there, but they'll get a chance to enjoy it. It's been a long time since Arthur and his kids have come. What happens when they get older? Things change. They have camps, they have friends, they have activities, they have things they do in the summer, so it's not as flexible. The other ones we can still pull out of school for skiing and so forth. It's not so easy when they're in high school. So I love Colorado. I like. I used my health isn't so good as it used to be, but I loved being outdoors. I loved skiing. I liked hiking. I liked walking and traveling and doing all that. Being active and doing a lot of things. I didn't ski this past year for the first time, but I'm hoping I'm having a knee replacement in a couple of weeks, and I'm hoping that will fix it so that I'll be able to ski. I think I've been to about 34 different countries. I was counting them up the other day, and I really, really love traveling. It's just so exciting to me. I like the Far East probably the most. Love Japan and Vietnam. Angkor Wat, I was only spent 2 days in Angkor Wat. I could have spent 2 weeks there. It just was fabulously beautiful. So many things to see. I'd like to go back to Bangkok and spend some time in that area to Thailand. I'd like to see all of that. I was shocked when we were in Kuala Lumpur, and it was bustling. It is so commercially successful, it just puts us to shame. I mean, they are building everywhere, and it's just wonderful. It's nice to see. But you see, the focus seems to have changed from the United States. It's moving to the east now. I think the big powers are going to be over there before too long. But everybody's becoming homogenous, and I'm not thrilled with that. It's one of the reasons why I want to travel so much, is because I want to see countries as they were. I'm so glad I spent so much time in Africa, because right now it's not so easy to get there or to go there. Kenya's gotten difficult now. Kenya used to be safe. I suppose it's safe out in the bush, but it's not so safe in the big cities. Though when Jack and I were in Mombasa, which often again would be one of the alerted cities not to go to, a cab driver there told us that we were safer in that cave in Mombasa than any place in the world, because they were so wanting tourists to come that if anybody did anything to harm a tourist, they probably would have been stoned to death right there on the spot. That nobody was going to fool with tourists, so that word would get out that people were safe and start traveling again. But I don't know. I worry about Africa a lot. I'm glad I got to go when I did and see all of it. I'm saving Europe from my really old age. So. Jack and I have been together for 12 years, maybe going on 13, I guess. So quite a long time. And we just have a lot of fun together. It's been wonderful for me, and I think it's been pretty good for Jack too. So we like to travel together. We like to ski. We like to do a lot of the same things, and it's been very nice. Jack has 4 children, and I've got 3, and he has 5 grandchildren, and I have 9. So we have a lot of family, but we have a lot of time for friends also. You know, it's not just going from one kid to the next. You know, it's a very nice life. I'm very lucky to have him. We dine out a lot. We don't cook much anymore. We just don't. I mean, it's sort of crazy. We both like to cook. We cook in Telluride all the time, but here we tend to go out to eat a lot, or we go to Whole Food, which is a wonderful place. I don't think what else we do. Oh, we play bridge together, and I've taken up duplicate bridge, and that's really a lot of fun for me. I enjoy that. Like to do crossword puzzles. I like to photograph and to paint. I'm taking painting lessons mostly in Telluride. I do a lot of workshops there. They have artists that come through and will offer a weekend workshop, and it is so much fun. I really love that. Been doing a lot of pastels. Now I'm trying to learn how to do oils. I don't have any talent, but I'm determined to learn how to do this, and you can be taught to draw. You really can. It's just the most amazing thing. Because when I started, I couldn't draw at all. I'm not very good, but I'm a lot better than I was when I started.
What is your favorite word?
My favorite word, magic.
What about your least favorite word?
Don't.
What sound or noise do you love?
I love the sound of children laughing, you know, a grandchild giggling or having fun. It's just the best.
And what sound or noise do you hate?
Neighborhood air conditioners coming on all night long, which they do here. I'm sort of a slow starter in the morning, so I basically don't do breakfast with anybody. Isn't that awful? I know I should be down flipping pancakes, but Jack likes to cook, and he usually cooks breakfast for everybody. And I sleep late. It's just lovely. And then everybody goes off skiing, and then we'll pick them up and sometimes go out to dinner or cook or have people there. It's just a lot of fun, play games and just be together. You know, it's just really nice to hang out together. I'm used to listening to people more than I am to talking. So,
It's difficult, huh? I think this went really well, though.
yeah, I don't like to talk about myself too much, so that's that's the other thing.
Did you have fun at least a little bit?
I did. That was fun. Yeah.
You covered a lot.
My life has been exciting, but it sounds a little boring when you tell it, you know. But I've had lots and lots of fun, lots of really good times, and a few not so very good, but on the whole, I would say definitely very positive.
What are you going to do for the rest of the day after this interview?
I'm not quite sure. I'm going out to dinner, as I said tonight, Lata. That'll be fun. I'm almost finished a very exciting book. I'm probably going to do that. Finish it first. I don't think I mentioned that I like to read. That's my main activity. I'm also excellent at sleeping. I do both of them really well. So, I used to rollerblade in the park. I used to do all these things, but with the knee being bad, I can't do much.
Hopefully the surgery will
That's what I'm
give you
hoping.
kind of a second wind, as far as physical activity.
The whole theory has changed. They used to tell you to wait until you can wait any longer to get your knee fixed, but now it's to do it before you get completely deconditioned. So I'm liking that idea a lot. So I have high hopes that I will be up and at 'em soon.
2 weeks.
Which would be good. In 2 weeks, yeah. The recovery period takes about 2-3 months. It's a long recovery. But you're able to do things during that period. I mean, it's not.
It's the summer where you're probably not going to be outside as much anyway.
I'm going to be in Maine. I'm going to have it done in Boston, and then I'm going to go recuperate in Maine, where it's nice and cool, and I don't have to worry about too much. So
Just bring a bunch of really good books.
I've already been to the big bookstore and loaded up. We're going to drive up there so I can bring everything I need with me. It'll be nice. I have some pictures here of Maine that are in a magazine I want to show you
Okay.
that you can put in there.
Right. This is great.
Oh, good, good, good.